Okay, so I'm going to introduce somebody who maybe all of you know, Mr. Nick Emanuel. He's going to be leading the day today, and Nick has had a role change. He is now our lead marketing agronomist. We're trying to build brand, build more content on social media, be more present at trade shows, have people speaking at trade shows, and try and elevate that CropX brand. And Nick's the perfect person to take that role. So, Nick, I'll turn it over to you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Tim. So when they first asked me to lead off today's conference, or I should say when Naomi first told me I was going to lead off this conference, they originally had me scheduled for 30 minutes. And I said, 30 minutes to lead off a conference? And sorry, is there any background? Or is that just up here? We good? So 30 minutes is a lot, but the whole reason they wanted me to lead this off was to really talk about the history of this agronomy training day. So for many of you that don't know, I was also the founder of CropMetrics, which we merged with CropX back in 2020. And back when it was CropMetrics, we used to have annual water certification training that all dealers were required to attend for 1 or 2 days. Well, now I'm happy to say this is the first time we are adding this new agronomy training to the CropX conference. Yeah, I'll see if I can adjust the slides here. Any help with the slide stall? You want to mess with this? Somebody? Thank you. Otherwise, I'll use. So when I was mentioning back to with the 30 minutes, the fun part about doing this was I got to go back through a lot of old slides and content. And boy, did we have a lot. You know, like I said, it used to be 2 days worth of slides and content. But when we look back, this was one of the old slides that we used to start off and kick the water certification process training off with. And there's a lot of neat things here. Obviously, number one, it tells us how important water was way back when. You know, I don't know how old this photo is, but Nick Lammers used to always joke, this is truly precision water management. You know, water in each individual plant, which is ideally what we're trying to get to today. But when I mentioned Nick Lammers, he was the head of this certification process, and he was the one that introduced water management training way back in the mid-2000s. He led this certification process, and he was really our agronomy. So I want to thank Nick. He is now a dealer for many of you that don't know him, but he wasn't able to be here today. But again, it was his vision for education and training that really spearheaded this in the early days. And I'll talk a little bit about how important that really became to come. So back then we had a definition for certified water professional, you know, and what does that really mean? If you look at this, again, this is back from the early 2000s, a highly trained agronomist that has the skill set to provide water management tools to maximize the productivity and profitability for growers on a field-by-field basis. Today, I started to think, so how much more has that changed or adapted? What do we want to change about that as we move into 2025? You'll see we had annual training and certification, but back then, there was 5 different slides with all of the requirements that we required for our CropMetrics dealers back then. And this was just a word scramble, taking all those 4 or 5 different slides and combining them into one. But it was a lot, and it was intense. But that also, I truly believe, that really led into the success that we not only had back then, but has led into the success that we continue to have with CropX today. I always like to start off with this definition of what is precision irrigation management. And I always said it's not one tool or one individual component that does everything to solve one problem, but it's a systems approach to irrigation management. But more importantly, we're really trying to achieve three main factors. And these are really no secret: maximize water efficiency, improve productivity, and ultimately conserving our natural resources. But many of you, if you haven't seen this slide, for any agronomists out there, we've probably all heard of the 4 R's of nutrient management. Well, we had kind of put together our 3 R's of water management: the right time, the right amount, and the right location. And ultimately, everything that we're going to be discussing today and the great content we have coming up next all revolves around answering those 3 questions. But there's a lot of challenges to water management. If you watch that fuel gauge on the left-hand side, you'll see that fuel gauge is really bouncing around. Well, as you all know, that fuel gauge is ideally our soil profile sum of a moisture probe. And it's not that easy if you don't have a soil moisture probe out there. I like to compare that bouncing gauge to what growers are trying to do if they don't have a soil moisture probe. But why is it difficult? If we look at this old school graph of water use by crop stage, there's a lot of different things that are going on there. Not only is the crop using and utilizing different amount of water at each of those individual growth stages, but there's a lot going on beneath the soil too. What I really like about this graph today is it's really kind of indicating or showing us 2 things that our technology does. One, this, again, it's an old university chart, but that water use chart is an indicator of ET. Well, now we have a direct ET sensor that can tell us exactly what the ET of the field is, and it's no more indications or examples of how much it should be using. But then more importantly, then we have the soil moisture probe to tell us exactly what's going on with that rooting development beneath the soil and how much that water is not only using per day, but at each of those individual depths with the rooting development. Truly indicating how important this technology and the sensors are. But why should we focus on water? You know, what is really the true importance of water? You know, I had my own definitions of this. And again, going back through all this old content, we had 3 or 4 different slides between Lammers and I to answer this question. But I thought, you know, it's 2025. There's got to be somebody better to ask, why is water so important? Of course, why not ask ChatGPT? Right away, the first one, the number 1 influencer of crop yield is water availability. You tell any grower that, of course he's going to say, duh, we know that. Water is the most important. But why don't growers focus more on water? As you all know, growers won't think twice about nutrient management technology or seeding or population technology. But water technology is often one of the biggest hurdles. But why, when water is the number 1 influencer of yield variability or yield general? The next thing that pops up I thought was interesting because this wasn't something we specifically talked a lot about back in the past, but it is the reason why yield affects or why water affects yield first and foremost. But photosynthesis. You know, I'm part of some advanced agronomy teams with nutrient management that this is becoming the kind of the key word now is photosynthesis and plant health. That is the focus on maximizing yield today, photosynthesis. Well, what the driver we can see right away is water. The more we can improve our water efficiency and become better with our water applications, the better everything else below that becomes, nutrient transport and cellular functions. But this is what I liked most. Again, I had said nothing. My only question to ChatGPT was, why do we focus on water? And the answer comes back with CropX in it, directly from ChatGPT, which I thought was pretty cool. It's because technologies like CropX, they help optimize the water use, ensure crops receive the right amount of water at the right time, what I just talked about with those 3 R's, leading to higher yields and reduced water stress. going back to the importance of that photosynthesis. But it's not that easy, is it, talking to growers about this technology? I didn't have to look hard. These were all headlines that I've seen just within the last month in news publication articles, whether it's magazines or digital articles. But it's a hot topic. Profitability and ROI, and we're going to have a tough year coming up, especially in row crop production. And there's going to be a lot of cuts. There's going to be a lot of budget decisions having to be made. And there's articles like this almost every day popping up. So it's at the top of the growers, in the forefront of their minds. So how do we overcome this? Knowing that how important water is, but we know growers are going to be reluctant to even think about adding or keeping technology like what we're doing. Well, this was a poll taken, and you guys may have seen this from AgWeb, a grower poll on what are they most likely going to cut for this coming year. Well, unfortunately, you'll see it's going to be slow technology upgrades. And again, I'll stand up here and I'll be the first one to tell you that technology is usually the first one cut from a grower's budget, especially new technology if they don't already have it. So we know that, but we still know water is so important. How do we overcome this? Well, there's other barriers. This was an article that UNL just posted, University of Nebraska-Lincoln. It was the first time I had seen it just a couple weeks ago, but it's actually dated back in 2023. But if you look at all of these, lack of information about the technology value. So are we putting enough information out there explaining what the true value of our technology is? Available training, number of service providers, technology cost, overwhelming number of technologies, lack of time, not enough field days, and lack of qualified labor. Does anybody see any consistency there? Well, to me, when I look at that, I see available training, service providers, lack of time, not enough days in the field, and lack of qualified labor. 5 of those 8, you guys out here all answer. It's the CropX dealer that provides all of that for the grower. And more importantly, it's why you guys are here today. This advanced agronomy training is what we're trying to provide you so you can do a better job answering those 5 things. But ROI, let's focus on the ROI. I don't know if you guys have seen, but we have a new 1-page brochure out there today, and I don't know if it's in the packet, but if you guys need this, it's readily available to hand out to the growers. But this is a basic example of ROI technology on the farm and what a soil moisture probe can do. Now, let's say you guys are probably used to a lot of marketing examples from all the different products and services we see every day that get a little hyped up, that are probably pushed a little too far on what the true ROI is. I will tell you this is the most conservative example and really a well out average of what we actually do with one soil moisture probe per field. And you'll see later today in my VRI presentation, I'm going to dive into a lot of field by field examples, and you'll see exactly where some of these numbers come from. But we typically see anywhere from 20 to 50% savings on water, a 5 to 20% increase on yields, which ultimately is providing a $30 to $70 ROI with an investment on a soil moisture probe. But when we dive into the details behind that, again, conservative averages, we can easily save 2 trips of irrigation. Now, when we put this together, I used UNL averages from this last year. That's using $4 commodity price on corn and using all the current energy prices. So when we figured in the irrigation savings, it's an average of diesel fuel, natural gas, propane, and electricity, just using an average to come up with the $20 per acre savings on 2 trips. Yield increase, just a moderate 5% increase. And again, I'm going to show you examples on where that yield increase comes from later today. But when you minus and subtract the cost of the technology using a $1,300 per probe per field, it comes up to be $60 per acre ROI. And that doesn't even go into all the other benefits that the improved water efficiency and water management bring to your nutrient use efficiency and how much more valuable you're letting those other inputs become. So when we look at that, why not? You know, because you almost can't afford not to use CropX. This was a new slide from the Precision Planning PTI trials this last year. We're still waiting for the back end specific data behind this, but I thought this was really fascinating. You know, although, and it's soybeans, the little sister of every crop out there, but it still shows a very important factor. I mean, when you look at that range of ROIs there from $30 to $290, almost $300, and water management stands that far above, head and heels above all of them by that much of a factor, doesn't that show you a lot? So now it's more than ROI. Now it's proven. We know this works from other companies, third-party companies. And that leads us to why you guys are here today. Today's CropX dealer. Well, you might have seen this rig set up at some of our past conferences, or at least last year's in Omaha. What does this show you, though, from you guys as a CropX dealer? To me, I mean, I first thought they were crazy, but what it really shows is dedication. Dedication by you guys. Dedication why you're here today, to take your level of training to the next step. So again, I asked ChatGPT, so what is a CropX dealer today? Now, interesting enough, now it tells us CropX dealer is a certified water professional, which I thought was really interesting. It goes back to that term that we used to use all the time back at Crop Metrics with all those different requirements. And even though we haven't done this agronomy training for over 5 years, it still looks as you guys as certified water professionals, which I think is extremely valuable. It goes through all the different things that you guys are equipped to help your grower with. The soil moisture monitoring, as you know, the irrigation system designs. We have a session on that today led by our partner Ranke. Data analysis and water conservation. But again, when you look at that last statement of what it truly defines a CropX dealer is, it's very closely to that first definition I showed you that we used to start with for a certified water professional back 15 to 20 years ago. Is expected to use his knowledge to help farmers implement the best practices for irrigation management and water conservation, leading to crop improvement, productivity, and sustainability. And ultimately, that's what we're going to try to help you guys get to today. So as I said, you know, that Hummer with wrapped Hummer really shows your guys' dedication. Well, what does that dedication really mean for you guys? You know, I always laugh. You think about that Hummer, and no matter where I go, there's so many times throughout the year, whether it's a Nebraska Cornhusker football game or a basketball game or anything across the state, I'll run into random growers that maybe I haven't seen for a long time, or I'm introduced, that day just being introduced to a new grower. And I can't tell you how many different times that grower sits there and you can tell he's really trying to think, like he might know me or remember my name, and all of a sudden it clicks. He's like, oh yeah, you're that Nick Emanuel. You work with my water guy from Wood River, don't you? Always referencing that water guy. But that shows you what you guys have meant to them. You know, what you have become is their trusted advisor. And as you know, in any business, that trust and being that close to that grower is the most important thing in any service provider. So I don't know how many of you guys, if this is your secondary business with seed input, other inputs, fertilizer, chemical, but being that trusted advisor only brings you closer to them. And knowing water is our most important, not only natural resource, but our most important yield influencer, this means a lot to a grower. But more importantly, it's your dedication and being here at this advanced training that really leads to that bottom 90% renewal or retention rate. And that is significant. I don't know any other technology on the market that can truly boast a 90% retention rate. And we've had that ongoing for over 10 years now. So thank you. That comes to you guys. Thank you. Up next, we're going to get into the real meat and potatoes. And like I said, back when Lammers had started it, we called it Soil and Water 101. We're taking it to the next step with 201. So we're kicking it off with the Professor Jason French, Nick Stoll, as many of you know, our secondary professor John Gates, and Rebecca Schubert. So please give an introduction for them.